Hi class, so we move on to part 2 of different kinds of obligation. Joint and solidary obligations. According to the number of parties, an obligation may either be individual obligation or collective obligation. When we speak of individual obligation, this is the obligation where there is only one obliger and one obligee. So, simple lang yung obligasyon. Isang obliger, isang obligee, isang debtor, at isang creditor. Okay? Now, ano naman yung tinatawag nating collective obligation? Collective obligation is yung existence of two or more debtors and or two or more creditors. So, pwedeng two or more debtors at isang creditor or isang debtor at two or more creditors. Or parehong two or more debtors at two or more creditors. So, pag sinabi natin na collective obligation, it may either be joint or solidary. Okay, so what is the concept of joint and solidary obligations? Tandaan nyo class na nag-i-exist lang ang joint and solidary obligations kung two or more debtors and or two or more creditors. Okay? In a joint or solidary obligation, ulitin ko lang, there is a concurrence of two or more debtors and or two or more creditors in one and the same obligation. Okay, tatandaan nyo, dapat iisang obligasyon lang yung existence ng two or more debtors and two or more creditors. Inuulit-ulit ko yun at binibigyan ko ng emphasis for you to understand clearly. In a joint obligation, each debtor is liable only for a proportionate part of the debt, and each creditor is entitled only to a proportionate part of the credit. Okay? Ulitin ko ulit sa joint obligation, ang isang debtor ay liable lang sa kanyang proportionate part ng pagkakautang. Okay? At ang creditor is entitled only to a proportionate part of the credit. Okay? So, ganun lang ang joint. O ano naman ang solidary obligation? In a solidary obligation, each debtor is liable for the whole obligation and each creditor is entitled to demand payment of the whole obligation. Ulitin ko ulit Solidary obligation, ang isang debtor ay liable para sa buong obligasyon at ang isang creditor ay entitled to demand payment of the whole obligation. Bibigay tayo ng example muna ng joint obligation. A and B are indebted to X for 10,000. A and B are indebted to X for 10,000. Si A is liable only for 5,000. B is liable only for 5,000. Ganun lang kasimple. Kung ito ay solidary debtor, paano naman kung solidary creditor? Halimbawa, si A may utang kay X and Y na 8,000. So si X, pwede niyang kolektahin only yung 4,000. And Y can only collect the remaining 4,000. That is joint obligation. Okay? Now, magbigay naman tayo, ano mo naman yung mga words used to indicate joint liability. Pwede sabihin na proportionately, pro rata, man communicada, man communada, simple. Ulitin ko Ano yung mga words used to indicate joint liability? Proportionately, pro rata, man communada, mancomunada simple. So ganun lang ang mga pag nakita niyo yung words na yon, it already indicates joint liability. Okay? Now, collective obligation presumed to be joint. Diba? Meron tayong tinatawag na pag two or more debtors, two or more creditors. At halimbawa, hindi nyo nakita yung words na binanggit ko, yung proportionately, prorata, mancomunada simple. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Class, the presumption of the law is that in any collective obligation, it is presumed to be joint. Ulitin ko ha. It is presumed to be joint. The obligation is presumed to be joint when there is concurrence of two or more debtors and or two or more creditors in one and the same obligation. Okay? So pag wala kayong nakita pero wala rin kayong nakitang words of solidarity, then it is joint. O ano ba ang mga words used to indicate solidary liability? Ito yung jointly and severally. Okay, class, ulitin ko ha. Words used to indicate solidary liability. Number 1, jointly and severally. Number 2, individually and collectively. Number 3, in solidum. Number 4, mancomunada solidaria. Okay? Number 5, juntos o separadamente. Ulitin ko ha. Number 1, jointly and severally. Number 2, individually and collectively. Number 3, in solidum. Number 4, mancomunada solidaria. Number 5, juntos o separadamente. Okay? Yan yung pag nakita nyo yung words na yan, it indicates that the obligation is solidary. In the absence of those words, ito ay joint. Okay? Joint. Now, what are the different kinds of solidary obligation? There are 3 kinds of solidary obligation. Bibigyan ko na rin kayo ng example dito. So, una, passive solidarity. Pag sinabi nating passive solidarity class, this is solidarity on the part of the debtors. Pag passive ha, pag passive solidarity, ibig sabihin, collective ang debtors. Example, A and B solidary debtors are indebted to X for 10,000. X can demand payment of 10,000 from either A or B. If A pays X 10,000, the obligation is extinguished. Okay? A and B solidary debtors. Ulitin yung example. Si A and B may utang kay X for 10,000. Si X, pwede siya mag-demand ng payment of 10,000 kasi solidary debtor sila from either, kahit kanino, na A or B. Pag binayaran ni A, ang buong 10,000 kay X, extinguished ang obligation. Okay? Sir, tatanong nyo, syempre, ano nangyari dun sa bayad ni B? So now, A can demand reimbursement from B of his share of 5,000. Okay? So, ganun kasimple. At kung magde-demand si A ng reimbursement kay B of his share of 5,000, then it becomes a simple obligation or individual obligation. Now, active solidarity, baliktarin naman natin. There is solidarity on the part of creditors. This time, ang marami naman ay yung creditors. Okay? Example, si A owes X and Y 8,000. X and Y are solidary creditors. Either X or Y may demand payment of 8,000 from A. So kahit sino ang pwedeng maningil, basta buong 8,000, pwede nilang singilin kay A. So pag nagbayad si A kay X ng 8,000, the obligation is extinguished. Pero dapat ibigay ni X kay Y yung kanyang share amounting to 4,000. Okay? So that is the second kind of solidarity obligation. Number 3 is the mixed solidarity or on the part of both debtors and creditors. So dito, ang example natin, A and B, solidarity debtors, O, X, and Y, solidarity creditors, 12,000. So, ang mangyayari, X or Y may collect from A or B the total of 12,000. If A pays X 12,000, the obligation is extinguished. So si B, dapat i-reimburse niya si A ng 6,000. On the other hand, X must give to Y his share of 6,000 pesos. Okay, clear? So far, clear tayo? Next. Ano ba yung tinatawag nating when the obligation is solidary? Kasi sinasabi natin na ang presumption, joint. Joint siya pag merong concurrence ng two or more debtors and or creditors in one and the same obligation. Ngayon, paano naman natin sasabihin na merong solidarity ang liability? Okay? Una, pag nakita niyo yung words of solidarity, as I have mentioned earlier. Now, merong sinasabi ang ating batas. Tatlo yun. Mapapansin nyo sa left corner. Okay? Number 1, when obligation so expressly states. Okay? Ibig sabihin ng when obligation so expressly states, pag nakita nyo yung mga words or terms of solidarity obligation. Number 2, pag sinabi ng batas, when the law requires solidarity. Okay? When the law requires solidarity. Sir, meron po bang mga batas na nagsasabi na solidarity obligation? Meron. Example is Article 1915 of the New Civil Code. Ang sabi dito, when two or more persons have appointed an agent for a common transaction or undertaking, they shall be solidarily liable for the consequences of agency. Ito yung tinatawag natin na contract of agency. Okay? Pag merong dalawa at maraming tao, two or more persons have appointed an agent for a common transaction. Ang root word, ang important word dito is common transaction. So, may agent ka under the same transaction, then the obligation is solidarity. Okay? Now, what else? Yung tinatawag nating when the nature of the obligation requires solidarity. Kung dun sa nature ng obligasyon ay kailangan solidarity. Okay? Ito yung example dito is in the case of Liwanag and others versus WCC L-12164 May 22, 1959. Okay? Remember, tinuro ko sa inyo, ito yung mga matatawag nating jurisprudence. Ito yung decision ng Supreme Court. So, sabi ng Supreme Court, dun sa example ng obligation that requires solidarity, halimbawa, ang isang security guard, okay, a security guard of AB partnership, kunyari, was killed by criminal elements in the line of duty. The heirs of S demanded compensation under the Workmen's Compensation Law for the whole amount from A partner. A claimed that he should be liable only for one half thereof, and the other half should be shouldered by B, his partner. Since their liability is only joint, as the law was silent on the nature of liability, so sabi ng korte, the court ruled that the partner's liability is solidary since the nature of the obligation requires solidarity. The evident intention of the workmen's compensation law is to give full protection to workers. The purpose will be defeated if the employer's liability were only joint. Very clear yun ha. Okay, ulitin ko. Yung number 3 is that depende yan sa nature of obligation. So dun sa example na sinabi ko, yung Liwanag and others versus WCC, dito ang nangyari, si Liwanag ay isang security guard ng isang partnership. Pinangalanan na lang kunyari na A and B. Napatay si security guard in the line of duty. So nagdemand ang heirs ng compensation under the workmen's compensation law para sa buong amount. Kaya lang, ang nasingil ay si A lang. Sabi ni A, teka lang, magbabayad ako yung kalahati lang. Yung kalahati, kunin nyo kay B. Sabi ng Supreme Court, mali ang contention mo, A. Okay? Kasi, dito sa nature ng obligation ito, it requires ang pinaka-essence ng ating purpose or pinaka-purpose ng law is to give full protection sa workers. Ngayon, kung sinasabi mong ikaw lang ang magbabayad ng kalahati mo, it depletes the purpose. It will defeat the very purpose ng liability ng mga employers, which will not be allowed. Okay? So, the obligation is solidarity or solidary, thus making A liable for the whole obligation and can proceed to be for the reimbursement. Okay? Now, next, bigyan ko kayo ng example. A, B, and C are obliged to give X, Y, and Z Philippine peso 27,000. Ano to ha? Mind exercise. A, B, and C are obliged to give X, Y, and Z Philippine peso 27,000. How many distinct debts are there in the obligation? Sagot. There are 9. Okay, there are 9. Since the obligation is presumed to be joint, there are 9 distinct debts as follows. First instance, A owes X 3,000. Second, A owes Y 3,000. A owes Z 3,000. Number 4, distinct debts. A distinct debt. B owes X 3,000. B owes Y 3,000. And B owes Z 3,000. Okay? O ano pa? Meron pa? Meron. So, C owes X 3,000. C owes Y 3,000. And C owes Z 3,000. So, merong 9 distinct debts sa given example. Tandaan niyo yung mga example na yan, class, ha? It will be the base of our other examples para mas maintindihan nyo. Okay? So, using that example, eto yung mga pwedeng mga instances where we can understand fully ano ba yung act of solidarity or act of solidary creditor. It may either be useful or prejudicial to others. Ano yung mga instances na yon? Assignment of rights, extinguishment of obligation, different periods, and condition. Okay. Example. Tuloy-tuloy na natin. Pati yung rights of creditor to proceed against solidary debtor and effects of payment of solidary debtor. Pero magbigay mo tayo ng example para mas clear sa inyo. Kunyari, sa given example, A, B, and C, joint debtors, are obliged to give X, Y, Z solidary creditors, 27,000. How much may X collect from whom? Okay? X being a solidary creditor may collect the sum of 27,000. However, since the debtors are joint, he may collect only 9,000 from each of them. After collecting the sum of 27,000, X must give Y and Z share of how many? 9,000 each. Okay? Dito kasi, joint yung debtors, solidary naman yung creditors. So, si X, pwede niyang singilin yung amount ng 27,000. Pero kailangan niya ibigay yung 6,000 kay Y at Z. Okay? Another example. A, B, and C, solidary debtors. This time, solidary debtors naman si A, B, and C are obliged to give X, Y, Z as joint creditors 27,000. How much may A be held liable? Okay, this time, solidary debtors against joint creditors para sa 27,000. Si A, magkano kanyang liability? A being a solidary debtor, answer, may be held liable for the whole amount of 27,000. However, since the creditor are joint, each them may collect only 6,000 from A. 9,000 from A. If A pays the whole amount of 27,000 to the creditors, A can demand reimbursement of 9,000 each from B and C. So, ang mangyayari dito, babayaran ni A yung 27,000. Ang gagawin naman ng tatanggap, i-divide niya yung 27,000 to 9,000. At, of course, dahil since solidary debtor sila, magde-demand ng reimbursement si A kay B and C. Okay? O, another example. A, B, and C, solidary debtors, are obliged to give X, Y, Z, solidary creditors naman. Okay? Pareho silang solidary ang obligation, debtors and creditors. The amount of 27,000. How much may Z collect from whom? Z may collect the whole 27,000 from any of the solidary debtors, each of whom may be held liable for the entire obligation. So, si Z pwede niyang kolektahin yung 27,000 kay either A, B, and C. If Z collects 27,000 from A, dapat ibigay ni Z kay X and Y yung kanilang share na 9,000. A, on the other hand, can demand reimbursement from B and Z ng 9,000 each. Okay? So, very clear. Yan ang ating mga concept. Next, some problems when there is unequal sharing in the debt or credit. So, you have to discover that. Ano ba yung unequal sharing? So, pag halimbawang hindi sila pantay-pantay, so all you have to do is understand whether it is active solidarity, passive solidarity, or mixed solidarity. Okay? Oh, what other useful or prejudicial to the solidary obligation? Example again, A and B are solidary debtors of X and Y, solidary creditors this time, in the amount of 20,000. Ito yung example natin. If X renounces or remits the whole obligation without the consent of Y, will the obligation be extinguished? Ulitin natin ha. Si X renounces or remits the whole obligation without the consent of Y, will the obligation be extinguished? The answer is yes, because the remission made by any solidary creditor extinguishes the whole obligation. Kasi solidary sila. Ibig sabihin ng renounces or remits, na i-extinguish na yung buong obligation because of renunciation. Okay? However, X has to give Y share of 10,000 since a solidarity debt may not do anything prejudicial to his co-solidary creditor. Okay? Kung halimbawa, ayusin natin ha para mas maintindihan nyo. According to Article 12.12, A and B, solidary creditors. X and Y, solidary creditors. Sabi ni X, nire-renounce niya na ang kanyang, ang pagkakautang ni A and B. So, ibig sabihin, dahil sin solidary debtors sila, the whole amount. At kung sila ay solidary creditors, nirenounce niya yung buong amount of 20,000. Eh, since nirenounce niya yung buong share, kawawa naman eh. Kung siya lang naman ang nag-renounce ng buong share niya, ng buong utang. So, ibig sabihin, si Y, walang nakuha. Now, it is prejudicial to the solidary creditor. So, sabi ng batas, dapat bayaran mo. Okay? Bayaran mo or mag-reimburse ka o ibigay mo yung share ni Y since kayo ay solidary creditors. And what you did na renunciation is prejudicial to your co-solidary creditor. That is according to Article 12.12 of the new Civil Code. A solidary creditor who has caused the extinguishment of the obligation by remission, novation, compensation, or confusion, who has collected the debt shall be liable to the others for the shares corresponding to them. According to Article 12.15 naman. Okay? So, according to Article 12.12 in relation to 12.15, ito yung mga different modes of extinguishment. Binanggit dito, remission, novation, confusion, compensation, or collection of debt. I will discuss this sa next topic natin, which is extinguishment of obligation. Same example, number 2. Kunyari naman, suppose the remission of the whole obligation was obtained by A. Yung isang debtor, nakuha niya na mai-remit na yung utang. May A demand reimbursement from B? No. Because the remission of the whole obligation obtained by one of the solidary debtors does not entitle him to reimbursement from his co-debtors. That is Article 12.20. Remission being the gratuitous abandonment by the creditors of their rights to the obligation. Kung isa yung creditor, yung example natin kanina, pwedeng maningi, dapat magbayad si X kay Y. Pero this time, hindi pwedeng maningil si B. Okay? Hindi pwedeng kumita pa si B. Kumita pa si A, sorry. Si A nga pala yung humingi ng remission. Ibig sabihin, pinatawad siya or dinonate, bigla siyang nagkapera pa. So, hindi allowed yon, sabi ng batas. That is 1220. Article 1220 of the new Civil Code. This time, suppose that X renounces or remits a share amounting to 10,000. So, si X, sabi niya, yung share mo na 10,000, huwag mo na intindihin yun. However, it turned out that B had already paid 20,000 to Y 2 days before. Si B naman, nagbayad na ng buong amount kasi solidary creditors at saka debtor ang relasyon niya. May B still collect 10,000 from A representing A share? Yun ang tanong. Of course, the answer is yes. B may still collect from A yung 10,000. The remission made by the creditor of the share which affect one of the solidary debtors does not release the latter from responsibility to his co-debtors in case the debt has been totally paid by any one of them. The remission was effective. A's remedy will go after X or Y to collect the sum he paid B. Okay? So, si B, dahil nabayaran niya kay Y, kukolektahin niya kay A kasi utang naman nila yon. So, mangyayari, si A ang mangongolekta kay creditor ng X, kay X and Y. Or, either. Okay? Para doon sa 10,000 na binayaran niya kay B. as a debtor. Okay? That is according to 1219 of the new Civil Code. Okay? What else? Okay, pa tayo na. Same example again. Babago-baguhin lang natin ng konti. Makinig na lang kayo. A is indebted. A and B is indebted to X and Y. Solidary creditors. Si X and Y. Okay? A is indebted to X and Y solidary creditors for 24,000. Suppose X makes a demand against A. To whom shall A pay? Okay? So, ito naman ay collection lang. A must pay to X kasi si X na nag-demand. If A pays to another solidary creditor, kunyari si Y, the sum of 20,000, the payment as a rule is valid only with respect to Y's share. Okay? Which is the amount of 10,000 pesos. Okay? Kasi dalawa lang naman. Now, thus if X do not receive their respective shares from Y, si A can still be held liable for the whole 10,000, the whole 20,000. That is according to 1214. Okay? Intindihan ba, class? Any questions? Message me. Next. Bigay tayo ng ibang example. Just take note of this example, class. A, B, and C, solidary debtors, borrowed 30,000 from X. Ulitin ko ha. A, B, and C, solidary debtors, borrowed 30,000 from X. The obligation is evidenced by a promissory note signed by the debtors. Yan na, merong promissory note. X demands payment from A. However, A pays only 12,000. May X still go after B and C? Pwede ba na mangolekta pa rin si X kung nagbayad na si A ng 12,000? Pwede niya pa bang kolektahan si B and or C? Solidary debtor siya na. Yes. X may still go after B or C or both of them for the balance of 18,000. The creditor may proceed against any one of the solidary debtors or some or all of them simultaneously. The demand made against one of them shall not be an obstacle to those which may subsequently be directed against the other, so long as the debt has not been fully collected. Okay? That is the first instance. Now, same example, if A pays X 30,000, what are the rights of A? Ayan na tayo ha, nakikita nyo na yan ha. Nakikita nyo yung mga act of solidarity creditor, either useful or prejudicial to others. So this time, if A pays X 30,000, what are the rights of A? Answer, A can demand reimbursement from B and C at 10,000 each, together with interest from the date of payment. However, if payment is made by A before due date, he cannot collect interest during the intervening period. Okay? Example, from the date of payment to due date. So, demand lang siya ng reimbursement. Kung due na, pwede siya mag-interest. Pero kung hindi naman, he cannot demand. Okay, another instance. A pays X 30,000. However, C has become insolvent. How much may A demand from B as a reimbursement? A may demand, answer, si A, pwede siyang mag-demand ng 15,000 from B. So maghahati sila. If an insolvent debtor cannot reimburse his share to the debtor who paid the obligation, such share shall be borne by all his co-debtors in proportion to the debt of each. That is according to Article 1217. Thus, A and B shall bear C share at 5,000 each. So, total 15,000. Class reminder lang to ha. Ang insolvency or insolvent debtor, dapat yan, court declared by court yan, class. Hindi pa pwede sabihin nyo, wala akong pera, insolvent ako. Hindi pa pwede yung class. Person to be declared insolvent should go to court. And the court shall rule that such person is insolvent. Okay? Now, next. Another example. If A pays X 30,000 more than 10 years ago, after the note had become due, can he still demand reimbursement from B and C? Ito na yung mga tinatawag nating prescription or lapse of time. Ulitin ko ulit ha. If A pays 30,000 more than 10 years after the note had become due, can he still demand reimbursement from B and C? The answer is no. He can no longer demand reimbursement because payment by a solidary debtor after the obligation has prescribed does not entitle him to reimbursement. The same rule applies if the payment is made after the obligation has become illegal. Okay, wala na siyang karapatan. That is very basic. Pag nag-prescribe na, kasi pag nag-prescribe, ibig sabihin, na-extinguish na yung time because of prescription or nag-lapse na yung time. Posible ba yon? Yes. Depende sa usapan. Okay? And not only nag-lapse of time, but naging illegal na yung obligasyon. So, walang karapatan para humingi ng reimbursement yung ating nagbayad na debtor. Okay? Now, what else? Ano pa ba mga rules in case thing has been lost or prestation has become impossible? Example, A, B, C, and D are solidarily liable to X for the delivery of a specific, kunyari, sing-sing, valued at 20,000. Ulitin ko ang example. 4 na solidary debtor liable kay X for the delivery of a specific ring valued at 20,000. Si A, B, C, and D. What is the rule? Kunyari, fortuitous event. Okay? So, anong mangyayari? The obligation shall be extinguished. Article 1221. This is the rule. This is according to the rule that no person shall be responsible for fortuitous event. Eh kung si D may kasalanan, all the solidarity debtors shall be liable for the payment of the price of the ring plus damages and interest. Pag isa lang ang may kasalanan. Okay, ang mangyayari, magbabayad pa rin dahil sila ay solidarity debtors. Magbabayad pa rin sila kay X. However, the solidarity debtor making the payment can recover what he has paid from the guilty debtor. So, lahat sila pwedeng mangolekta kay D. So, if X goes after A and A pays the price of the ring, the damages and interest, si A can demand reimbursement of 20,000 plus damages and interest. Kanino? Kay letter D. The guilty or negligent debtor. Okay, ano pa? Different periods and conditions. Solidarity exists although the creditors and debtors may not be bound by the same periods and conditions. So kahit sila ay solidary creditor or solidary debtor, pwede rin namang iba ang kanilang mga periods at condition. Gusto nyo example? That law is Article 1211. For example, A, B, and C are solidarily liable to X for 9,000. Ulitin ko, simplihan natin yung example. A, B, and C are solidarily liable to X for 9,000. The parties stipulated that the share of A is payable on demand, the share of B on Christmas Day next year, and the share of X if X passes the board exam. X may demand payment of the share of A of 3,000 anytime from either A, B, or C. On Christmas Day next year, pwede naman mangolekta si X. Payment of share of B kahit kay A, B, and C ulit. At pag dumating naman yung pumasa sa board exam, pwede rin siya mag-demand ng share ni C ng, and again, another 3,000 sa kahit kanino kay A, B, and C kasi sila ay solidary debtors. So, iba-iba lang yung time element. Pero dahil sin solidary sila, kahit kanino pwede nilang kolektahin. Okay? Effect of unauthorized assignment of creditors' right. The solidarity creditors are bound by mutual trust and confidence. Hence, a solidarity creditor cannot assign his right to a third person without the consent of other solidarity creditors. Article 1213. Litin ko ha. Ano magiging effect ng an unauthorized assignment of creditors' right? Siyempre, the solidarity creditors are bound by mutual trust and confidence. So, hindi pa pwede na mag-assign ang isang solidarity creditors sa isang tao, sa isang third party without the consent of the other solidarity creditors. Because, hindi naman yun nila ini-enjoy. Yung third party, hindi naman nag-enjoy ng trust and confidence sa isang hindi nila kasama. Okay? So, kasi, if the assignment is without the consent of the co-debtors, the assignment is not valid as to them. Accordingly, they can recover their respective shares from the assigning creditor in case the assignee who collected the debt fails to give them their share. Eh kung tumakbo yung third party na yun, so sino pupuntahan ng solidarity creditors? Eh di pupunta nila yung original na kasama nila na creditor. Okay? Ano pa? Defenses available to a solidarity debtor? Ano ba yung mga defenses na tinatawag natin? Those derived from the nature of obligation, such as prescription and illegality of cause. So, pwede yun. Siyempre, nag-prescribe na yung obligation or naging illegal na yung cause. What else? Those personal to the debtor being sued or those that pertain to his own share, such as incapacity of the debtor or non-fulfillment of a suspensive condition as to his share. These are personal defenses available to a solidarity debtor. Ibig sabihin, pwede niyang i-depensa ito or pwede siyang ma-extinguish yung kanyang liability. And those personal to the other debtors with respect to their own share, such as incapacity of another debtor or non-fulfillment of a suspensive condition with respect to other debtors' share. Okay? So these are the defenses available to a solidarity debtor. Joint indivisible obligation. Ano ba yung concept nito? A joint indivisible obligation is an obligation where the debtors or creditors are jointly bound with the prestation or object which is indivisible. Okay? Indivisible yung obligation. Yung object or prestation, doon sa nilalaman ng obligation, indivisible. Pero yung concurrence of two or more debtors or creditors are present. So, ang tawag doon is joint indivisible obligation. Anong characteristics noon? The creditors must act collectively, meaning all of them must make the demand unless one is specifically authorized to act for others. That is Article 1209. A demand made by one or some but not all of the creditors will not be effective. So, dapat lahat ng creditors may demand or must act collectively. Lahat sila. Next, the demand must be made against all the debtors since compliance is possible only if they act together. So, dapat, yung magde-demand, kung halimbawa, solidarity debtors, so, dapat sa lahat mag-demand. Kasi you cannot ask one of them because it is an indivisible obligation. So, the right of the creditors must be prejudiced only by their collective acts. Thus, a renunciation made by a joint creditor extinguishes only his own share. The obligation, however, is converted to obligation to pay the value of the thing. If all joint creditors makes a renunciation, the obligation is extinguished. Class, ibig sabihin lang nito, kung indivisible yung prestation or object at yung isang creditor ay nag-renounce ng kanyang share, anong mangyayari? Paano yun? Indivisible nga yung obligation. So, mangyayari, yung prestation or object will be converted to peso value or value nung object para yung bawat share ng solidary creditors will be divided accordingly. Okay? Next, if one of the debtors does not comply with his undertaking, the obligation is converted into a monetary obligation to pay damages. So, the debtors who may have been ready to comply shall not contribute to the indemnity beyond the corresponding price of the thing of the value or the value of the service in which the obligation consists. Pag yung isa naman, pag yung magbabayad naman, yung isa, ready ako magbayad, pero yung dalawa, hindi makapagbayad. So, pag kinonvert mo yun into peso value, maglalagay ka ng interest or damages, yung ready magbayad shall not be liable. Shall not be liable to the damages and interest. What else? If one of the debtors is insolvent, the other shall not be liable for his share. Pag insolvent again, a person will only be declared insolvent if such is under court instruction or under court decision. Bigyan natin ng mga example. A, B, and C are jointly indebted to deliver a specific car valued at 900,000 to X, Y, and Z. Ulitin natin ha. A, B, and C are jointly indebted to deliver a specific car valued at 900,000 to X, Y, and Z. First situation, X, Y, and Z must make a demand against A and B and C for the delivery of car. Okay? So lahat sila dapat mag-demand. Kanino? Joint debtor at si joint creditor ang magdi-demand. Ay, solidary. Ulit. Joint creditors ay magdi-demand sa joint debtors ng buong indivisible object or prestation. Okay? Next. If A is not ready to comply with his undertaking, the obligation to deliver the car is converted into an obligation to pay its value plus damages. So, ano mangyayari? B and C shall be obliged to pay 300,000 each. Each lang. Pero si A, siya yung nag-default or siya yung may kasalanan, shall be liable for 300,000 plus damages. So, yung dalawa, hindi na magbabayad kasi ready naman sila to pay. Next situation, if A is insolvent, B and C shall be liable only to their respective share of 300,000 kasi nga joint lang to. 300,000 each. Okay? Kinonvert na rin natin sa pesos. Sa value. Next situation, if X naman renounces his right to the obligation without the consent of Y and Z, then only his proportionate share is extinguished. The obligation, however, is converted into a monetary obligation. So, ang mangyayari, 900 minus 300 na nirenounce ni X, 600. So, yung 600, ibibigay kay Y ng 300 at kay Z ng 300 by, tatlo sila, A, B, C. So, magkano ang share nila? 200 each na lang. Okay? That is joint indivisible obligation. In the case of indivisibility versus solidarity, the indivisibility of an obligation refers to the subject matter or object not being susceptible of partial performance. On the other hand, ang solidarity naman refers to the tie between the parties. So, one therefore does not imply or give rise to the other. Thus, there may be the following obligation. Paano magiging sitwasyon? Tandaan nyo, ulitin na, pag sinabi mong indivisibility, it refers to the subject matter or object. Pero yung solidarity, it refers to the tie between the parties. So, meron ba mga sitwasyon? Yes. Joint divisible obligation. A and B are jointly obliged to C to construct a pavement 2 meters wide and 10 meters long. Joint siya, pero indivisible yung kanilang object. Next, joint indivisible obligation. A and B are jointly obliged to give a specific horse to C. So that is joint indivisible. Kasi yung horse indivisible yon. Yung una, pavement 2 meters wide and 10 meters long, pwedeng divisible yon. Kasi pwedeng hatiin yung trabaho. So, pag solidarity divisible, paano naman? A and B are solidarily liable to pay C 10,000 in 2 equal installments. So, divisible yon. Pera, 10,000. So, dalawa, so 5,000. Si A at saka si B. Pwede nilang hatiin, pero since sila ay joint, si C ay pwedeng mangolekta kay A and B ng 10,000. O, paano naman ang indivisible? A and B are solidarily liable to give a specific horse to C. So, in this case, hindi pwedeng hatiin dahil yung kabayo ay indivisible ang kanyang obligation. Okay? For your questions, you can private message me. And good luck. See you for part 3.